Well, good morning. I hope I don't make you too uncomfortable. My goal is to talk a little bit. I know. If you knew how cold it was that day. And Photoshop is kind. So, yeah. But I know it might seem awkward that a politician's going to come today to talk about silence. So I'm not really going to be talking about being in politics. I'm going to talk about what I've done and the silence I have experienced and the voices that I've tried to help give. And also, let's talk about the solutions that we as a society can do together after we talk about what's really happening and who's being silenced in not only our city, but our country as well. Let's also define or have a working definition of what is silence. For many people that I've represented, it's the inability to just say what you want, to say someone has hurt you, to say that I need something. But it really comes down to also being unseen. Silence and being invisible are completely connected. And who is invisible? I mean, it's obviously people who you physically can't see are invisible. But the people I represented were cleaning and working in large corporations. They were in our homes every day. Those folks were completely invisible, often to the folks who they were working for, to the neighbors. It's being invisible that's the real challenge for a lot of people who feel silent or silenced. And so today, the goal is to talk not only about being silent, but how do we make sure people feel seen? And being seen oftentimes, whether we like it or not, is connected to whether people are really valued in society. Based on how much money they have, based on whether they speak English as a fluent language in this country, based on who they know, based on what they do. So there are a lot of people who feel undervalued, therefore feel invisible, and therefore are silent. So I'm going to talk about some of the work I've done. The biggest population that I have worked with in terms of voice, in terms of being invisible, in terms of being unseen, are domestic workers. So I started off as a community organizer working at the Brazilian Worker Center, and I came there having been laid off from a large law firm. I came to Massachusetts. I'm the first lawyer in my family. I was so excited to make it, and then the recession hit. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I love to play capoeira, and so a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you come volunteer at this immigrant center? I said, okay, fine. I assumed I was going to get another big law firm job and move on with my life because I was going to help make money, to help my mother who was still working 2 jobs. I had financial goals to help my family. That was my goal. And I don't begrudge that of anybody. Make money, help your family, help yourselves. It's not a bad thing. But that was taken away from me. And so I went to go volunteer at this immigrant center. And at the immigrant center is where I was exposed to all sorts of levels of silence. Many of the people who were coming there were undocumented. Many could not speak English. And all of them, I'm telling you, all of them worked hard. And they were in that clinic, the legal clinic, because they were not paid. They were completely exploited. And I think it's very important for people to understand what the stereotypes about immigrants, folks being undocumented, they were working extremely hard, and I was going to fight to make sure they got every single dime that was owed to them, according to our laws, according to minimum wage. So you can leave the controversies of whether they should be here or not out of this conversation. I believe if you work, you should get paid. So that's what began to come into the clinic, and representing the construction worker, not so much a problem. Representing the painter, not a problem. But then it came to the nanny or house cleaner. And I'd go to court, and I'd tell the judge, Your Honor, she spent many overnights in their house because they had newborn twins. And so she was sitting there helping the newborn twins adjust to their life. And so she had to do overnights. And she should be paid for all of that time. She was on call. And the judge would say, that's just not right. I'm not going to pay her for glorified babysitting. She doesn't deserve that money. She slept at some point, and so therefore, no. And I said, well, if she was working overnights at a security firm, right, who may have got a cup of coffee or slept or fell asleep watching all the monitors, no one would question that person gets paid for their time being there. But she, and I say she intentionally because majority of domestic workers in care are women, her time was questioned. The value of her work is questioned then. And whether she should be seen or not is then ultimately questioned. Because it's women's work. Care work, cleaning houses is traditionally women's work. And you can look back historically, that women's work was excluded from the New Deal. It was excluded from workers' rights, the right to organize, the right to get paid overtime, the right for minimum wage, the right for workers' comp. It was intentionally excluded. Domestic work was intentionally excluded for those protections. And I have to explain that because the worst part is when our government silences people in an entire industry, and that's what happened for domestic workers. Why? To appease the South, who would not sign on to the New Deal if farm workers and domestic workers were included. Now, who was doing the farm and domestic work in the South in the 1930s? Anybody? Black people, yeah. Probably 1.5, maybe 2 generations out of slavery. Their entire economy was based off of that, domestic work, farm work, and they were not going to lose that over minimum wage and overtime. So all the other work got valued. And domestic work comes in many colors. Irish immigrants, black helping workers. To today, many Latin American, Central American women are doing it as well. What has not come in is both genders. It's the devaluation of women's work by our government that has led to their silence. So we formed a coalition. We worked to pass the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights. We did it in 1 term, getting 99% of what we wanted, organized by these women, and the best part, organized by their women employers. Many doctors and lawyers stood with their nannies and house cleaners and said, no, she needs to be treated right, and there need to be legal standards for her. The other form of silence I've been dealing with, constantly still, is displacement. There's a silent moving out of many of our neighborhoods of people of many economic levels now who simply cannot afford to be here. And the impact, as I've studied, on children who are dealing with displacement, and their cognitive abilities, their self-esteem, and depression levels are the same as children who are experiencing homelessness. Let that settle in. These kids who are conscious of the fact that their mom and dad, their parents cannot afford to stay, many times their incomes are going to 70% of their income to stay in Boston, has resulted in a silent, painful effect on their children and their ability to learn in our schools. Whatever their background, immigrant, non-immigrant, black, white, whatever the background, that impact is a silencing effect, and it's a shame effect. For many people, there's a stigma. You can't afford it. You shouldn't get the help. You shouldn't be here. So it's not my fault. Again, we could talk about the policies that the government has put in or taken away that has led to that. In the Q&A, I'm happy to take on all questions too. But those are certain shame and stigma that a lot of people who are experiencing financial burdens have. One of the ones that we just came out against is the recent proposed rule for SNAP benefits by the Trump administration. I don't know if you're aware, it was requiring certain levels of work benefits to go in there before you can get SNAP benefits. That, I just want to be very clear, many people who are on SNAP and food stamps are already working extremely hard. There's a stigma that the assumption that getting help means you are lazy, means that, you know, the goal in your life has been to just sit down and be on SNAP benefits. There's a stigma and a silencing of a lot of our poor people in public housing on SNAP. And I know, because I was blessed to, after the Worker Center, go to work at Greater Boston Legal Services to continue my advocacy and representing a lot of these hardworking people. 2 other areas where I've worked in advocacy and filing silence, and that's in trafficking, sex and labor trafficking. There's an assumption that that is not happening here. Behind sex trafficking, the number 2 trafficked labor workforce are domestic workers. And I sued a lot of people under the UNT visa statutes for trafficking. I've never sued a working mom of 2 or 3 kids. I've never sued someone who lives in public housing or even middle-class families. I'm telling you, the folks who I've had to go after, doctors, lawyers, diplomats, in that order, and that amount of population. People who had the means to pay, and people who should have known better. And the worst part I find in most of the trafficking has been groups who got their citizenship and their ability to be in this country, going back to their home country and bringing someone over, oftentimes with barely an elementary school education, taking that person's documents, having them come live in the home, and then ultimately exploiting them until they either ran away, which happened with several of my clients. I had one person run to a bus stop and just wait to get on any bus, and she got on there and just rode it until she was told to get off. And somehow, through a network of friends and family, she was networked over to my office. It happens on a regular basis, and it's happening in plain sight. It wasn't like she wasn't at the playgrounds with the kids, with your kids. It wasn't as though they weren't walking around the neighborhoods. They were there. You see them. And they were completely being trafficked and in slave labor. So I bring that up not to scare you or to make you uncomfortable, because I have a whole list of other ways in which we together can give voice and be advocates. So traditionally, I took on the route of being an attorney. That's one way of highlighting, moving, shaking, advocating directly for folks. But not everyone is an attorney or wants to be one. I'm in politics. Okay, that's another form of advocacy, another form of highlighting issues. Again, not everyone wants to be, should be a politician. But there are two ways in which we, as a society, can give voice. By giving voice, that means seeing people, right, and valuing them. Obviously, there's the formal way of voting, which in local elections is dismal. It's really, really sad if you knew how much work we put in to try and get your vote, to even know that you have a city councilor. I don't know, I won't embarrass this room about how many of you know who live in Boston who your city councilor is or how you would contact him or her. Just to let you know, we have an awesome city council. We're about to have 8 women on it out of 13, the first time women will have a majority in Boston City Council. We've worked really hard to get there, to be seen, to be valued, and that's a big deal for the city of Boston. We also have majority people of color for the first time. What that means is that the city of Boston, the city council actually reflects the city of Boston. We are a majority women city. We are a majority people of color city. So nothing revolutionary, just that we look like the city we represent. So I had to put that in there, a plug for my colleagues. So please find your city councilors, please write us. The best emails, even if people disagree with me, just demonstrate someone cared enough to know what the heck I'm doing. I love those. I mean, I call everyone back, at least in my district at least. I can't call everyone all over the nation when they're against something, but I do call my folks back, and I want to hear from you about everything. So you can vote, locally especially. But the best way, and the way to eradicate a lot of this exploitation, is to be a conscious consumer. I mean, I could represent every single little house cleaner I could want in my life, but I found out what the underground economy looks like. I will go to Jane Doe's house as a house cleaner. I will present myself as the woman who's going to clean her house. She'll give me the contract. I add her to the list of houses that I'm going to clean. I, as known in the Brazilian immigrants community, am a schedule owner. I own the schedule. Now, you are the consumer. You think I'm cleaning your house. I haven't been back to your house, actually, since I got you on my list. Who is going to go to your house are the young women who I met at the Brazilian immigrant church who don't speak English, who may not have papers, and who are desperate for some form of income. I'm going to treat them like I'm a bigger sister or mother figure. I'm going to recruit them into my cleaning company and make sure that they get paid $25 a day. That's a lot of money for them. That's completely violation of the laws here in Massachusetts. But the first thing I'm going to do is make them do a week in house. In casa is what it's called. That's a week for free that they will work for me because they have to prove themselves. They have no idea what their rights are, and they will proceed to clean your house. Some of them will be just dedicated to ovens using Easy Off. I don't know if you ever breathed that in. It hurts to breathe that chemical in. I've had friends who are now lawyers. I've had friends who are professionals who came this way, and that was their first job, and all that they talk about is how their nose bled for all day. Just nosebleeds all the time because they're working with these chemicals all day. But again, you have no idea. I'm not cleaning your house. And if anything's broken or any problem, you're going to call me and I'll say, oh my goodness, I'll fix that or I'll pay for that because I'm your point of contact. I've had schedule owners then ultimately sell their schedule for $30,000 to $50,000. Someone else picks up the schedule, and you may still think I'm cleaning your house, but now another schedule owner has it. That's an economy. It works and it's happening. I'm asking folks, if you get a cleaning company of any form, please be a conscious consumer. Ask them, are you a schedule owner? I swear they will blow their mind. Ask them, do you pay your workers minimum wage? We don't allow people who don't come into my house. I don't allow that. You should say that. You don't pay your workers minimum wage? I'm paying you more than minimum wage to clean my house. So if you're not breaking off minimum wages or following, workers' rights, do you have workers' comp? What if the workers fall down at my house? These are just basic questions I'm asking you to ask people who come to work in your homes, or to tell your friends who may have a cleaning company to ask those questions. Be a conscious consumer, and you can change the entire industry just through the questions that you ask. I refuse to allow people to be invisible in my home. My home is not a safe place for any form of human exploitation. That's what we need to say. That's what you need to ask. The other form is also in care work. If you have a nanny, if you have somebody coming into your home, is the nanny agency informing her about her rights? Are you informed about her rights now in Massachusetts? Ask yourself. It's not an easy conversation to have, but she is not a member of your family, as close as she may feel to you. In many cases, she'll be there when your parents are dying, and sometimes when your children are being born. She's extremely close, but she is a worker in your home. So you need to ask yourselves, am I consuming her labor in a just and moral way? When you come home a half hour late, do you compensate her for that? That half hour is a half hour less that she has with her own children. These are questions you have to ask. That is probably the most uncomfortable conversation I've had with parents because of the child care crisis we have here in Massachusetts. It's extremely expensive and extremely hard to find affordable child care. But is that a question of whether we should not pay child care workers the minimum wage, or is that a question of whether our government should be doing more to provide for better leave policies, to provide for paid leave policies, to provide for more daycares either in home and providing for more infrastructure to assure that we have places to put our children? It is an uncomfortable conversation, but I firmly believe everyone should be paid at least the minimum wage. Now, if we fought for it to be $12, the fact that she's in care work, I will not undervalue that work anymore. It's hard to take care of children. It's extremely hard to do that. She should be paid for that. So here we are, and I'm asking you to be conscious consumers of these industries. When you do that, the person is seen, is valued, is understood, is given a voice. And yes, please vote. And those of you who are lawyers, great. Those of you who want to be politicians, wonderful. It says, I understand it takes 6 or 7 asks of women especially to run for office. So here's your ask, run for office, please. If you are considering it and thinking about it, please run for office. Whatever political party at this point, both need more women running. And men too. But I prefer to see more women coming up, stepping up, and saying, we're here, we won't be silent. We're connected is what I've learned more than anything in the world. And also, many of us at some point will be doing domestic work or needing it in our lives. So we need to be conscious about that, how we consume it and also how we give it. My mother, after 23 years in the Air Force, was doing domestic work. So part of the reason why I fought so hard for these women is because they reminded me of my mother, how she was called the N-word in people's houses. The work is extremely hard when you're cleaning adults and dementia. And my mother did that for me and my sister. So I'm protecting other mothers and protecting other people as well. And so can you, by being conscious consumers. So I love the Q&A. There's no tough question. Trust me, I've had the worst. and the best questions ever, especially as a politician. And Twitter, boy, do I love to hate Twitter. But so there's no way you can offend me. There's nothing that is painful to me. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed doing this, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Thank you so much. And we will open up for Q&A. Anyone? Anyone? No, she was comprehensive, fantastic. No questions?
No questions?
No itching, burning desires to start something? No? Okay, there we go. Hold on. You stay right here.
I saw something in the news yesterday about au pairs and the
Yes.
Domestic Workers Bill of Rights.
Yep.
Could you talk about that?
Absolutely. So what happened? What happened in the news? So let's talk about. Does everyone know who au pairs are? Right. So we understand that it's a Department of State program started to provide a cultural experience in the United States. You have to be 18 to 26 years old to, I guess, be value of or want a cultural experience. And when they come to the United States, they are on a visa that allows for them to get an education credit for the education and the cultural component, but also requires them to work up to 45 hours a week. So families have different schedules. You know, it could be 10 hours a week, but up to and no more than 45 hours a week. Child care services. So part of that, to get the person, is the family has to put up almost $10,000 in fees to the au pair agency. And then the au pair can come in and they have to now get paid federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. And that up to stipend is about $195 a week. So she can work 45 hours a week, getting $195 a week. Now, there are certain benefits that the families do provide. They provide them with a car, usually to move the children around, a cell phone, usually to contact her about the children. It's not necessarily just for her private cell phone use, and usually food and board. But again, you know, these are benefits, but they're also directly related to her ability to provide childcare. So we passed the domestic worker, and I say we, was a coalition in 2014, the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights, which requires a written contract, definition of your hours, following the minimum wage. It caps how much you can take out of someone's salary if they're going to be in someone's home. That passes in 2014. 2 years, we had a coalition, working women who have domestic workers, everyone's there. Silence from the au pair agencies for 2 years. The law passes, 2014. 2015, au pair agencies are sued in a massive class action in Colorado, and they have settled that. As a result, they had to pay back wages to the au pairs. And I bring this up because the au pair agencies have seen 2014 new law, 2015 across the country, you're sued for not paying them the appropriate amount of wages. All right. So the Attorney General says, listen, I understand you're in the middle of visas, so we're going to delay the implementation of the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights to allow for you to adjust au pair agencies. By the time they were supposed to adjust, they sued the state of Massachusetts. They sued us, saying we don't want the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights to apply to au pairs because of the cultural exchange. We believe there's a preemption. The federal government should be running this, not the state of Massachusetts. They sued. Lawsuit was dismissed in the district court. And then recently, the First Circuit agreed that the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights applies to au pairs as well. There are about 1,500 or so au pairs in total in Massachusetts. And they're no longer exempt from the rights that were hard fought for the 60,000 or so domestic workers. So now the families have found out that they have to pay minimum wage, overtime, and that they're capped at how much they can deduct. And that's a huge shock for any family because they really feel that this just happened now. But I'm telling you this, the au pair agencies had 5 years to adjust their model, to inform their parents, and to give them an informed decision as to whether paying someone $12 an hour to live in your home is worth it financially. So that's where we are right now.
Any other questions? All right. Then we will wrap up our last installment of Creative Mornings for 2019. And please, everyone, give us a warm round of applause for Lydia Edwards. Thank you so much for coming. And goodness, as we head into 2020 and as we head into this holiday season, on behalf of the team, we wish you all the best, wonderful, safe, loving time, and also a little bit of reflection. So we hope you take the privilege of silence and bring it back to your space. And whatever you find there, be it monkey brains or calm and peace, we hope you find that. Thank you so much for being such a great part of our community. And for you first-timers, I hope you come back again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.